Yes.
Recording now. Yay. Hi, everybody. I am Julie, and I'm here with Ray Edwards, and we're going to speak about trance development today. But I do want to plug his books, The Philosopher, Jiraiya, and Seeker. It's book one. It's about philosophy, inspirations, many beautiful messages that Ray has received from Spirit, and many of them through our circle, our Friday circle that Ray and I are in. And Ray has another book, which I haven't received yet, and it's called Elephant Inspires Mouse, and it's inspirations that Ray has received from Spirit over the last 15 years. Hopefully I got that correct.
Absolutely right, yes.
Awesome. So what I want to do is chat a little bit. I'm sure we'll get more comfortable into it about your development to help other people. I get a lot of questions from people, private messages about development, and most of them are early learners, early developers who are new to trance, and they ask a lot of questions about blending, and I can tell them my experiences, but everybody else has other experiences, and my goal is to get them to watch these videos and learn from them. So I want to pick your brain a bit, Ray.
Okay. Yeah.
You're one of the best trance mediums I know, and very good author. I'll also put links to how they can get your book when I post this.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to start with, because I've heard you ask this question to many people, so I'm going to ask you. Did trance choose you, or did you choose trance?
That is an interesting question. I'm probably different to a lot of trance mediums because, I mean, people like Steve Newton, Andrew Codling, who are really, really good trance mediums. And it's like, for them, it's been a much more positive development, and it's a very clear thing there. I started to sit for development in 2005, I think it was, 2004, 2005. And I sat in this development circle for, I think, about 6 weeks before I opened my mouth, because I'm sat there and I'm surrounded by physical mediums, trance mediums, clairvoyant mediums. I'm sitting there and I haven't got a clue what I'm doing there. You know, I only went because somebody suggested I should go. And anyway, it started with a group of probably about 14 or 15 of us, and then it whittled down to about 8 or 9, very regular. And yeah, so for me, that was the start of trying to tune into the spiritual pathway in any way, really. And I carried on with that, and it was probably about a year before the circle leader decided that he ought to be trying trance with us. And it took me a very long time before I felt confident enough to feel that what was coming through was somebody other than me. Because you always start thinking, this is just me speaking, or, you know, it's just my brain working. And then in the early days, I was very lucky because the circle I sat in, the leader was very encouraging, very supportive. And he kept just saying, just open your mouth and say everything. You know, Mary has a little lamb, or whatever it is, just open your mouth and get the voice vibration going. Because once the voice vibration starts, that's when spirit can tune into it. And they start to bring their vibrations in line with yours. If you're sat there saying nothing, they got nothing to tune into. So
That's
it's
true.
really, really important to get your voice working. And so that's when it started. And I sat, and we used to do trance probably once a month. And I would get little bits. I had a character who used to come in the early days, who used to call himself the court jester. And he was a little bit, well, he was quite frivolous, a little bit funny, and a little bit naughty at times. But it fitted with my what I was comfortable with. And so him speaking, and he always used to get people laughing. And so he was quite an interesting character, and he stayed with me for a while. And then I had
What was his name again, Ray?
He was called the court jester.
The court jester.
Yeah, the court jester in English history is the one that steps in the court, in the king's court, and just does all sorts of stupid things and gets everybody laughing and fooling around.
Oh.
So this was his role, was to try not to take things too seriously, but just to lighten it up a little bit. And yeah, he used to raise a few eyebrows, shall we say, with some of the things he said. But he was a lovely character. And then I had a period of time after probably 2 or 3 years when that was developing. Then life happened and other things got in the way. And I probably started to sit for trance more seriously. I don't think when it was, maybe about 2009, 2010. And that went on for a little while, and then life got in the way again. And so I hadn't really sat consistently for trance until I joined your circle for quite a while. Because the story is interesting, because I go to a gathering, spiritual gathering at Cobra Hill in February every year. And at that, it's quite a big gathering. So last year there were about 70 or 80 of us, I think, there. And a couple of years ago, I went for a reading with Steve. And Steve said to me, well, you know, what are you looking for? And I'm saying, well, you know, I'm not really sure what I should be doing on my spiritual pathway. And he said, well, and he was tuning in. He said, well, I'm being told that you should actually try a bit of development on the internet. And I've never done anything like that before. But apparently he did quite a bit of development on the internet in his early days. And so I thought, oh yeah, okay, right. So I sort of parked it, as you do, in the back of my mind, and as ever, nothing about it, until about July time that year, when I get a message from a lady called Jane Brown, who I knew vaguely on Facebook, but not very well. And she messaged me and said, oh, I'm in a trance circle. We've had a couple of people drop out. You fancy trying? And I thought, well, actually, I had the reading and I do nothing. And then the flunking is in my lap. So maybe I should do something about it. So that's what drew me towards your group. And I was very skeptical about joining it, not because I thought there was anything wrong with the group, but I just didn't know how it was going to work when you're sitting, connecting to a computer thousands of miles apart and thinking, well, is this really going to happen? And I have to say that the first time I sat, and you could feel the energy as if you're in the same room, just blew my socks off. It took me weeks to get used to the idea that it actually worked that way. That was brilliant. So that's really how I got into it. So I sort of dipped in and out of it a bit, but then sort of came to it, you know, more seriously, probably a couple of years ago.
That's wonderful. You would never know it because you've always come through really well. It was when you were taking it serious. I think it's great. Yeah, Jane she's the one that brought you into the circle, isn't she?
Yeah.
And you've been a teacher in the circle also. Very, very rewarding time with you, that's for sure.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, you're humble. I'm just messing with you, but it's true. So let me ask you something, Ray. Yeah. How important is it for us to get to know our guides?
That's a challenging question because a lot of people place a lot of significance. One of the problems that I've come across in the past with developing mediums is that people get very hung up on who their guide is. It really is important to them, and they like to think they've got somebody important or somebody well known. And actually, all the time that I've been more seriously connecting with trance mediumship, to me, it's always been emphasised it's more about the message and not the messenger. Because what is the point of it at the end of the day? If you're making a connection with spirit, and you've got an intelligence that is trying to bring information through to you, there has to be some point to that. And it isn't about them standing there going, whoa, I'm brilliant. And neither is it about you doing that.
Yeah.
What is important is the message that you're bringing through, and it actually helps other people. Because, you know, we live in very materialistic times. And a lot of people have just either don't want to be involved with anything in terms of belief or faith or religion, or just can't be bothered. And so we actually, as mediums of anything, whether you're a healer, or, clairvoyant, a clairaudient, or a trance medium, physical medium, you have a job to do. And the job is to try and bring people closer, not just to spirit per se, but to the fact that they are spiritual beings and that they have a role in this life and they incarnated for purpose. And just, it's just an important job for us to do, maybe.
I do agree. And bringing their personality through also is very important. Where some of us are trying to be more stoic and not allowing their personality to go through, then your mind gets into it. You agree?
Oh, yeah. And why not? They are personalities, they're individuals. Just because they're in spirit doesn't mean to say they're all the same. And so how would you distinguish between them if they weren't different?
Exactly, yeah.
And, you get, to me, I'm fairly lucky, I sense, in the way that made it, the trance communicators who work with me have identified themselves. And I think it probably helps other people to know, who they're dealing with. So I think there is some importance. But the fact that they are very general types and they don't try to personalize it as such, means that it does tend to make you listen more carefully to what they're saying than think about, oh, this is, Queen Elizabeth or Queen Mary or King Henry or whatever it is, or Geronimo, as I've come across in the past. It really doesn't matter in that sense, as long as you feel comfortable with the energies. And
agree. I do know that I was studying yesterday for practice, last evening, and I had this name come to my mind, Alexander Lord. My mind got into it because I was like, whoa, who's Alexander Lord? So I started looking up Alexander Lord. Biggest mistake I made, because there's a whole bunch of them. So now I don't know who it was. So I kept saying, who are you? But I still do that.
And that's one of the problems of the internet, is that there is almost far too much information out there. And you can get hung up on the trail, on the personality, on the character of the person that appears to be coming through you. And you've got to say to yourself, well, does that improve the quality of my mediumship to do that? And if you learn a lot of stuff with your conscious mind like that by doing the research, then you're detracting from the fact that they can bring you information which you don't know.
That's true.
And, which is the proof.
Which is the proof? Yeah. Well, I think philosopher gives us a lot of proof about the spirit world. He's amazing. Of course, you're the one that brings him through, but he's pretty amazing.
I think he likes to work with me because I have a fairly empty head a lot of the time, so he just finds it easy to step in and say things.
He does, though, but he talks. I have seen the knowledge come through. I can't explain it. It's so rewarding to be able to look back and read the transcripts and listen to it. I don't know if you see, but a lot of people are wowed by his messages, and they need to get out there too. So how important is it to blend with your guides?
Well, it's a good thing to be able to do if you want to do trance mediumship.
Yeah.
Trance is all about blending. There are various misconceptions about trance, and I'm sure some of the others have spoken about this, where some people think, well, you're here and they come and they grab hold of you and they're in there and they're in control. But it's not like that. And Steve puts it very nicely when he talks about, they're in a vibration up here, you're in a vibration down there, and you need to bring them together and then actually come together. And so it's not a question of somebody taking over somebody. It's very much teamwork. It's very much coming together as individuals, as you would in any friendship, really, as you would in any job. You have to learn to work with people. So it takes a little bit of time to suss them out and to feel their energies, to know what makes them laugh, what makes them cry, what makes them enthusiastic about something. And then once you've got those basics understood, then you can work more deeply.
I agree, because I think also some of us who are new to developing concentrate too much, which I did, on the pressure I received in my head. because when Mahasa came through, my head would just feel like it was pounding with pressure. So I would concentrate more on it. When I started learning to blend more, I started feeling him the blending more, and not in my head, but more in around my body, my aura space.
The other thing is that, of course, we live in a very physical universe. But if you go back to science, and I do this not because I know a lot about science, but because it explains it for me, is that everything is energy. There is no solid matter. Everything is energy, which is vibrating at certain frequencies. And the reason that we perceive ourselves as we are, or as we perceive anything around us, is that that energy is programmed to behave in a certain way. And therefore we see what we see, we experience what we do. And so if everything is energy, then the energies can come together. And because as far as I understand it, what's been explained to me, is that the spirit world is energy-based as well. And so what's happening is that they're in a place where the energy vibrates at a high frequency, we're in a place where it vibrates at a low frequency. And so to blend together, to work together, we need to actually bring our vibrations in line. But that doesn't mean, when we talk about them being on a higher vibration, that doesn't mean they're actually in like an authoritarian sense of them being much, much better than us. Because the other thing that I've come to believe, to understand, is that they're not all singing or dancing. They come to work with us because the vibration that they're operating is similar, at least common in some way, to the vibration at which we're working. If there wasn't a commonality, we wouldn't be able to work together. We wouldn't be able to come together. It's a bit like trying to mix air and water. You know, if you were completely different, it just wouldn't happen. So there has to be that similar quality to the vibrations in order for that relationship to take place.
My experience with the vibration of spirit with my photography is that they vibrate much faster than we do. So they have to slow their vibration down. Yeah. So, and I learned that just from taking photos of them over time. They tell you that stuff too.
Some of your photos are brilliant.
So I want you to explain that. Actually, you just kind of explained the blending process. I would say you did. But when you started blending, how did it feel? I mean, did you feel the pressure?
It took me a very long time. I may have mentioned this before I actually felt that it was coming from somewhere other than me. And the thing is, because I've had inspired writings for so many years, it wasn't what I didn't realise, but the trance relationship is very much like the inspired relationship that I have, because your guides come close and they impress something on you. And when I get inspired writing, it's not that I sit down and think, right, I'm going to spend the next half an hour writing. I could be doing anything. I could be shopping, I could be walking around the park, I could be just sitting there. And then suddenly there's an impulse. It's something, I know I've got to pick up a piece of paper because there's a phrase in my head or a word in my head that won't go away. So I pick it up and then it just flows and I put it through. And so I was thinking about trance one day, and I was sort of sitting there and thought, well, why is it that, you know, it's not such a clear switch on, switch off for me when I go into trance? Why is it not more obvious? And the answer I got back is, well, you're always connected. What's the problem? And it is because, I suppose I spent a lot of time on my own, so I do talk to them a lot. And so they are very close. I feel that, you know, a very sort of close friendship with them.
It is true when you sit longer and work with spirit, they're right there. The blending process works faster. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, I stopped looking for signals that it had happened, that I was actually in trance because I was feeling that, and started just accepting that the relationship is there, and that some days they're coming a lot closer, and other days they step back and I do my own stuff. And so it's not like a switch on and off, it's more like a gentle swaying between the two for me. So it's just...
I'm sorry, so when you set for trance or you set to work on your own, you don't ask them to come into your space There's
I do what I suppose most people do. I will sit and I will connect with the earth energies. So I send my roots down into the earth. I send my column of light up into spirit, and I open my sacred space, and I expand my aura, and I invite them to come and join me. But I can't say, 2 minutes after that they're there. I can't say that. I just accept that, having set the intent and been true to my heart about what I feel about it, that they will come and they will work with me. But as I say, it's not an on-off switch. It's just a process, and it just happens. As long as I trust, it happens.
Okay. A lot of times with tutors, for example, I've always been taught that you have to give them permission to come into your space. You have to ask them to come into your space. Right? Some people ask 3 or 4 times. Some people ask once, which I don't believe you have to ask 3 or 4 times. But trust is part of it, isn't it?
But it's a bit. You look at it a bit like, I said regarding understand. If you think about friendships, what do you do if you've got friends? I mean, particularly in the current times, and maybe it's the same for you, because most of the time, because probably a lot of your friends are very long way away from where you live anyway. But if you want to make contact with somebody and it's from a while, you pick up the phone, you dial them number, and you start talking, and you don't have to re-establish that basis of your friendship. It's already there, and so you just connect like that, and that's the way it is.
Awesome. That's wonderful advice. I love that, Ray.
So, but yes, I set the intent. My intent is always to try and be the best that I can be to work with them, and then I just trust that they get on with it and give me whatever is right for people.
So before you come in the circle on Friday, before we get online on Zoom, do you sit and open your?
Sometimes I try to sit for probably 10-15 minutes just to warm up, if you like.
Because you have your aura is right there every time you show up. That your golden aura. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I think that actually this is one of the advantages of having a regular commitment to sit at the same time, is that whether you consciously do it or not, you're creating that atmosphere, that intent of wanting to make the connection, and so it's there, and they know it's there, and they know they can trust you because they've worked with you for a time, and they're coming close.
I know earlier you spoke about your experience with trance when you first got into it. Your first word, what was it? Do you remember when you?
Probably hello. Just something
Were
fake as that.
Were you self-conscious?
Oh yeah. I was sweating like mad. I was very, very self-conscious. I mean, it may not come across so much now, but when I was younger, I was very, very shy, very self-conscious. And if I walked into a pub, I'd blush. Yeah. Embarrassment, thinking everybody was turning and looking at me. That's the way I was when I was younger. And so it's not so much that I worry about me personally. It's that it's important to me that because I'm working with spirit, and it's really important to me that I show proper integrity and honesty and everything with it, is that I don't want to make a fool of them by being ridiculous. And so I know that I need to operate within a certain zone of morality, if you like, of what is acceptable.
And you do. I like the way you answer questions before I ask them too. Okay, do you hear your guide's voice in your mind?
Oh, I think the answer to that is probably sometimes. Sometimes. I'm hesitating because it's almost like similar in a way to when I do my inspired writing. And people say to me, well, is it dictation? Yes, sometimes it is. Now, the first time that I got anything in the way of inspired writing of any length was in one of the meetings at Cobra Hill many years ago. And we were sat there. And there's probably about 60 or 70 people. And you can imagine the energy in a circle of that size. And all sat around the outside, this really big hall. And I'd gone there and I got really sort of this was the first year that I'd gone to sit in anything like this sort of energy. And then it's like I was told I'd got to come out of meditation and start writing. And I just knew I'd got to do it. So I always carry a book, being a scribe as I do. I always got pen and paper to hand. And so I got this poem, and I was actually good at. But what happened was, it was all I could do to keep up with the words as they came through to me. And you know, somebody said to me, another good trance medium called Dean, he said, I was watching you. He said, I could see how hard it was for you to just try and get it down in time. And then this was in this big group. I've never really said anything in a group of that size before. And I got this, and it's like, and they're going around, they're saying, you know, has anybody got anything they'd like to share, and whatever. And it's like, there's a voice, hand in my back going, pushing me forward, saying, read it. So I got this. I'll read it out to you because it's still, I like this, and it was the first really important thing I got. It's called God's Ministers. There's many kinds of ministry when all is said and done. There's ministry to millions and ministry to one. Just how to see your ministry and how to make it work. To stand and talk to hundreds or just a private work. There's ministry to spread the word and those of evidence. But there is no ministry for sitting on the fence. So reach up to the cosmic and see what you can get. There's many ways to minister. There's nothing fixed and set. And if you seek sincerely and with an open heart, the spirit world will help you and show you how to start. You may just be a channel, so channel good and true. The words may come from up above or mixed with bits of you. You may perform on platform. In circle you may sit, but wherever it is you join in, you're sure to do your bit. And do not look to judges, no critics let you sway. If you are working truly, the spirits have their say. You may give words aplenty, or you may give just a few. You may just get a picture, or a smell may just come through. But what you get has travelled a long way to get here. So speak out loud and clearly so the audience can hear. You may not feel you got much. You may just get a bit. But to someone waiting out there, it may make a perfect fit. So do not be faint-hearted. Just give it all as got. Let spirit be the judges of how you keep the plot. And always, please remember that nothing goes to waste. So do not try to rush it. There is no need for haste. Philosophy inspires us and messages are proof. Just let the spirits work through you. Don't try to be aloof. When you make your connection, enjoy it, have some fun. When you minister to millions or you minister to one.
That's wonderful.
And that was all in just one meditation that we did one morning. Just, and it went straight through.
And it comes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fast.
That's wonderful. I love that. But I have to ask you a question now that you said come fast. When we get messages from spirit, which I have experience in, it's trying to slow down what's coming through. It comes through so much that in trance, I found myself at times stumbling over my words because I'm trying to get it through. And then your awareness peaks, and how do you handle that?
It's almost like there are times when when we sit on a Friday, it's like I'm aware of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like they're pouring water down a funnel, and it's coming into your head, you know, through your crown. And it's like some of it I'm sure I miss because there's just so much stuff coming through, but you've just got to trust that the right bits, the best bits, are the bits that you actually manage to get out your mouth. But there are times afterwards, sometimes when we sit and I think, oh, do you know what? That I'm sure that went through my mind, but I didn't say it.
You know, I have sometimes, especially with Grumpy, some of his stuff that comes out in my mind doing circle doesn't come out my mouth. It's like he doesn't have patience, and I'm trying to work with him because I think he could actually say a lot more than he does, maybe a little bit better. Yeah, I think I'm still going through that fast. We don't want to be too fast. They say it flows, but you don't want to be too slow either.
No. But I mean, I think, you know, once you've got that relationship, because the information that you're getting isn't just for you. The information you're getting in a group like that is for the group. And, you know, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be in a businessman to actually put somebody out there on Facebook or on through books. But it's where it goes that matters. You know,
Yes.
the message is coming from them. And yes, it's part of your development. Yes, it improves your skills, your communication skills. And the more you do it, the more you improve that relationship that you have with your guides, and the closer you get, and the more you trust with them, then the more it will flow. But it is difficult because, you know, when you get somebody who's got a lot to say, and I mean, you know, the philosopher can, once he gets off on one, he can go on all night. So it was an interesting situation when we asked him to limit the time, and he did that very accurately.
He does really well.
And he settled for that now. Quite happy with
And he still gets a lot said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I've been told by tutors, I've learned not to go to tutors anymore because, and nothing against them. There's some wonderful out there, and I think people need guidance. So that's not how I meant it to come out. But I do know that I've been misdirected by certain people, like going deep. I concentrated so much on going deep that I was falling asleep and I wasn't developing. So what is your take on that?
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to mention his name again, Steve Newton. I like the way he describes it because he likes the process of blending into trance as being like it's like a seesaw. So you start with your feet firmly on the ground and you progress along the seesaw. So you get to a point where you're sort of wobbling between being fully in control and then letting go. And once you get past that center point, it tips. And the further beyond that you get, the more prevalent is the influence of spirit with you. So people will say that, you know, if you're not deeply in trance, you're not doing trance. To me, it's all altered states of consciousness. And if what is coming through has value to the audience, to the people that are receiving it, then does it matter at what level of altered state of consciousness you are? How often have you heard the saying, you know, out of the mouths of babes and sucklings? And you'll have a young child who will pop something up and your jaw drops. And you think, where did that come from? So do you just dismiss it because they're little, or 2, 3, 4, whatever it is they come out with? No, because if you value wisdom, you value the quality of it for what it is. It doesn't matter where it's come from. And in the same way, it doesn't really matter what altered state of consciousness you're in. You know, whether you're in a shallow state of consciousness or a deeper state of consciousness, if what you're bringing forward has value to people, has value to you, then to me, that the job is done.
But that's how I get, because as a medium, which I used to do mediumship readings, and I would get the messages, but I wasn't unconscious or whatever, or asleep or deep or whatever they say. But I do know that from my understanding, only 10% of the trance mediums actually can get into that state. Do you know what I mean?
There are very few that I've seen some really good deep trance mediums. One of the best that I've seen, Steve is very good at it. But one of the best I've seen is Rob Goodwin. And he
Yes.
White Feather, and you know, he's awesome. I mean, he's in a different league altogether as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it doesn't matter as long as your intent is right. You're being honest and truthful, and you know, if other people think, well, there's, you know, that sounds a bit like Ray, or that doesn't. No, that's not the phrase he used, not the tag he used. But he keeps popping in bits that sound a bit like them. If you're judging it just on the technical aspect of it, you're losing the point of it, really, because the point is the message. And if that message is bringing you something or bringing somebody else something, as it is with clairvoyance. And I mean, what I should have said there at the beginning was that I am not a clairvoyant medium. You know, I have had odd occasions when I've been pushed into a corner and told to do it, and it's very much like pulling teeth with a pair of pliers, and it's just incredibly difficult for me. Now, it's something I'm going to have another go at some stage, but you know, I've moved from inspired writing and a bit of inspired speaking into trance. I haven't gone through the clairvoyance route. And so there is no necessarily prescribed route for you to become a trance medium. Some people just drop into trance straight away without doing anything else. As it is with healing as well.
That's so true. I have a lot of traffic. This is why I go in my closet. You can hear the traffic out here, so I'll mute myself every now and then. I didn't want to interview in my closet, and people would really think I'm weird. Anyway, I asked about the deepness and the voice. Can you explain spirit using our voice to speak? I know the first time I spoke, I felt my guide there extremely strong. He was so powerful. I expected this man's voice to come out of my mouth, and it was mine. So
Very much so. And I think that's one of the biggest difficulties that most trance mediums come across. Is this business? Is it them? Is it me? And I always like to come back to the thing that remembering that we are actually spirit in a human body. So we talk about them and us, but actually it's all us. It's just that there is a smaller bit of spirit in us because we're in a human frame. They're in the complete spirit vibration. So, but our higher consciousness, as I understand it, remains in spirit. So this is where we have our connection to spirit. This is this is where the little still small voice that comes in the back of your hand and tells you what you shouldn't be doing, which we ignore at our peril usually. So yeah, so it is a battle, and it's one where if you develop your relationship properly with your guides, properly maybe another word to use, but if you are sufficiently confident in your relationship with your guides, then you trust that when they come through and they're bringing you information, they're bringing you wisdoms, whatever it is, advice, maybe bringing you just something for somebody else, not for you. And then you trust their integrity because you have the integrity yourself. And so I'm getting things in my head at the same time as yes, I sort of lost the plot of it there.
but that's okay, because, but you know, they talk about, like I have one lady I'm mentoring right now, and she talks about a voice box. I've had a few of them actually. Yeah. A voice box, and I you know, and I see things. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I remember where I was going with it now. So that what happened, because you talk about, you expected a male voice to come through, and that's because the impression of the guide was making on you was who they were and what they felt like. So if your next door neighbour walked in and sat next to you and was a man and started talking, you'd have the physicality there, and he'd be using all his physical abilities, including his voice box here. Now, when spirit work with us and they're blending with us, they're not materializing. They're making use of the energy of your physicality. So they're coming in and they're making use of the knowledge, the vocabulary, the personality that you have. And they're using your voice box because it's easier for them to do that than to physically form a voice box, as can happen in physical mediumship. But it's easier for them working through trance to just use your voice. So yeah, of course it's going to sound like you. And there are times, there are some trance mediums I know, where the voice does change quite dramatically. But there are a lot that it is their normal voice, or very close to their normal voice. You may get odd inflections of a different intonation, maybe a different, almost different dialect to it. But really, how else are they going to do it? You know, if they want to come and talk to you, and they're going to use the trance mediumship, they're going to have to use what's available, and what's available is the relationship that you've had with them. And it's fine.
Yeah, Well, yeah, you know, when in our circle, you can see certain ones of us have a voice box. I mean, it looks like they're forming, at least that's what we're told they are. We don't really know, Spirit knows, but their voice normally comes out unless we're getting physical in a circle. So I don't know. Yeah, I've had other people tell me that they're not speaking in trance, but the spirit's working on the voice box and so forth, so on. And it's hard to lead them to tell them that you don't need a voice box from spirit to speak in trance.
No.
I think I just did lead them. I think I answered that. You don't need spirit's voice, you need your voice to
You know, I come back because all the time, for me, I have to keep things simple because that's the best way for me to feel I've got a grip on it. So if I always come back to what I call the lowest common denominator. And the lowest, this is the only way I understood mathematics. The lowest common denominator is energy. And if everything is energy, then why can't you get voice boxes? Why can't you get transfiguration? Why can't you get overshadowing? And why can't that be in daylight? You know?
I mean, myself, I totally agree. And we get, you know, they say you can't do physical in circles, but we see people getting ectoplasm and things like that in our circle. Not all every week, but some weeks.
Yeah.
Well, especially Sue. Sue gets it mostly in it more than anybody.
The other thing, I come back to this thing about them and us. And we think very much about, you know, we're physical and they're spirit. But if you come back again to the fact that this is all a partnership, this is all close, then, you know, they're not all, I think I may have said this earlier, but they're not all singing or dancing. They're learning in the same way. So when they form this relationship, and bearing in mind there is some commonality in the vibrations between us, they're not necessarily great, wonderful masters. They're people at a level of development in the spirit world, which has something in common with our vibration. And so they're going to be trying things. They're going to be experimenting with things in the same way that we're experimenting with our trance communications with them. And so, yes, we will get different things happening. And this is why it's important to say, and it's interesting the conversations we have after circuit sometimes when you get the explanations about what people have seen, what people have experienced. Because by discussing that, we're giving feedback to the guides about how successful they are in the things that they, and we don't know necessarily unless they actually tell us as part of the communication. We don't know what they're trying. But if we're describing what we've seen and what we've experienced and what we've felt, then they're getting the feedback that they need for whatever it is they're trying to do.
That makes so much sense. And they let us know that they're developing also. You know, people don't realize that and a lot of new spirits that are coming through, they've never done this before.
No, that's right. And how are they going to learn if they don't come try? That's why sometimes you get a situation, and it's interesting when you watch clairvoyance, sometimes they'll say to somebody, well, I've got a female presence here and I can see them, but they're not saying very much. And this is probably because it may be the first time they've come through and they're experimenting, they're trying it out, and it takes a while for them to get used to the feel of it and to bring in their personality through, bring through the communications that they want to deliver. And that's it, you know, everybody's different. And they're all at different levels of ability.
That's so true. Right. So we spoke about everything, I think. Can you explain Spirit's voice box and their personality on us, which, you know, I feel my guide's personality on me extremely well. I feel his presence. I can picture, maybe that's where my clairvoyance comes in. I'm shown what he used to look like. And Mahaska, but never Mahaska's feet like I've seen Grumpy's feet. But do you see Philosopher? Do you feel his presence on you?
I feel him more. Have I ever seen it? I've seen on occasions, I've had sort of glimpses. And it was really interesting because Emma Mather did the drawings that are in the book that you heard of earlier on, Philosopher, Duran Secret. And I've never actually met Emma, so she connected with me remotely. to draw the pictures of the different guides, 3 guides. Now, I think about 12 months before that, I'd been for a reading with another medium, who I don't see very often. And what I'd completely forgotten, she'd given a description of the guide that was with me. And when I looked at the picture that Emma had done, just something rang a bell. And I went back and looked at this description, this other medium, and it was spot on, absolutely spot on. And it fitted with sort of what I'd saw, what the mental picture that I'd got of it. But do I see him normally? No. Do I know he's there? Yes, because I feel his personality. And I mean, people in the circle have said, well, we always know when it's the philosopher because he looks grumpy.
Yeah, him and Jiraiya. But I don't call philosopher Jiraiya because if I can't tell he's there, sometimes he's there and somebody else is with you, so it's pretty amazing. But you can see it's very, very strong.
Because we see we focus on the personality that is most foremost in coming through. But to remember always that person has probably got a team that's working with them. Mm-hmm. So what happens sometimes, I think, is that the main character will come through and establish the link. And if they've got somebody who's maybe not quite so experienced, they will like tag along with them, and then the main guy will step back and the other one will come forward. I think this is Zenith that I've had come through, who normally gets the philosopher to make the connection, and then he'll step in and say this piece. But you know, recently, I think it may have even been last Friday when I had the Native American Yellow Sunflower, and he's got a completely different energy, and it's like, you know, everything's standing, all the hairs on my arms and the neck are standing.
Yeah, he does have a very strong, complete and strong energy. You can tell. Very wise man. A philosopher's wise too, but yeah, that was very enjoyable last week too with him coming through. Sun Cloud. I'm going to post it.
Yeah, I've been doing the transcript this morning, so that will be up very shortly. I've got to type it up sometime later.
I want to also post it on the video on YouTube of him coming through. I'm going to clip it, yeah, because it was a really beautiful message. I'll put it on my page also. Mm. And the importance of circle. Do you feel it's important to belong to a circle for development?
I think it is, because you know, I really feel for you in the States because you are so far apart, and I know you don't have the same physical gatherings that we're able to have over here because we're all a lot closer together. But to sit on your own and develop, I think is, you know, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of trust, immense amount of trust, that you're getting things right. And when you're doing your development with somebody on that, and you've not had, you know, to sit with them physically, it must be incredibly difficult. So I have great admiration for all of you in the States, you know, for the development that you've achieved. You know, I've been very lucky because I've been able to go and sit in person circles and to go to churches and, you know, watch various mediums and watch lots of demonstrations. So to me, that's helped me enormously with my development. But to have a circle, well, you know, it helps to build the confidence, and it also helps to bring in the energies that you need and to boost the energy at a time when you're trying to make that connection. Because with the best will in the world, if you're sat on your own, it's so easy to get distracted. And, you know, it's like you've got your traffic noise outside your place. And, you know, if I'm sat in my lounge, you know, and I'd start looking around, I start thinking about all the things I should be doing, all the jobs there, or maybe I ought to tidy up that corner, it looks a bit of a mess. And so when you're in a when you're working with other people, we're reminded that there is a responsibility, not just to our connection with spirit, but to the other people that are developing as well. And so it helps to encourage a certain discipline, a certain self-conscious discipline, if you like, of having to contribute into other people's development. So I think, yeah, I think it's very supportive, it's very good.
I think that's what it's so rewarding about our circle. We're all encouraging, and there's no competition. There's nothing like that, which is another question. I'd like to give your input on that. You gave me you mentored me about it last week about competition. what's your intake? There's a lot going on with some people that I know that are being criticized by other mediums. Not, you know, about their being fake and they're trans or they're copying this person or that person. It's sad.
I will answer that by saying that your responsibility, I may have had this come through in France, but my understanding is that you have a responsibility in this life to one person only, and that is yourself. You are an aspect of spirit. You are a spark of the divine consciousness embodied in this human frame for this particular incarnated lifetime. And so that's your responsibility, is to work with that, to be the best that you can be, and to do the best you can do. Now, the other thing I'd say is that, yes, you will get other people, and there are those who are builders and those who are demolishers. And it's a lot harder to keep building than it is to demolish. And if all you're doing in life is knocking things down or knocking other people down, then you've got to ask yourself, well, what's the point of that? What are you achieving? So the only thing that you can really control is you. This is the only thing within your total sphere of control. And so you've just got to work with yourself, do the best you can, be the best you can. And I have a saying, I get these little one-liners every so often in spirit, and I was given other people's opinions or other people's opinions.
And that's a good one.
You
know, it can really hurt people though when it happens. It can hurt because a couple of the trance mediums that I know of that happened to, they all of a sudden they were sick, you know, for a couple weeks, or I mean, you can see as somebody outside looking in what's going on. There was this one girl that was criticized a couple of years ago, and I thought she was great. She's never spoke again. It's really sad. So I like to put it out there on my interviews now to let people know, you know, that. Well, and there's no competition. We're all trance mediums. We need to support each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you're not supporting other people, then you're being very selfish.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't work with spirit if you don't.
I mean, I've been told many times by spirit that, you know, it's not just all about you. Yeah. You know, there is a much bigger picture. There's always a bigger picture. You know, if it was all about you, there'd only be one of you on the earth and nobody else.
So true.
You know, you're in tens of thousands, millions of people that are around. And if we can do something on our journey through our development that enables somebody else to feel better about themselves, to have a better connection with their eternal being, then we're getting it right. If all we're doing is undermining other people and making them feel sad or angry or anxious or depressed or whatever, then we've lost it. We're off the trail.
And it's about when people speak of other people like that, I think they're showing more of what they are about. Yeah. When they're putting somebody else down. I've learned a lot from being in circle, and I've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate that. And I think you taught me to be humble and not to be so strict. But
you've taught me this is not true.
Thank you.
Bless you.
I personally, from my trance, it's not even just the messages. It's just learning what my spirit really is, who I really am, and it has taught me a lot. And I know it has you and other people, but it's just really humbled me and made me look at other people outside of my ego. You know what I mean? Like if I say like somebody's trying to compete against me, I just kind of look at them as though I feel sorry for them. I mean, I want them to compete. That's the wrong way. If they're putting me down because they feel like they're competing against me, I look at them in sorrow and not in hate.
But it's like if you were standing outside somewhere and you've got 10 people and you ask each of them to describe the scene that they were seeing, you would get 10 different versions of that scene. And this is because we're individuals. We all see things through our own eyes. We all see it differently. And you know, this is part of the beauty of human incarnation is the variety and the diversity that we can experience here. And this, well, from what I understand, this is what the divine consciousness is experiencing itself through all the different aspects of life that it has created. Now, if it wanted to get the same feedback all the time, it would have created everybody to be the same, to see the same, to hear the same, to think the same, and it would be pulled out of its goal. So, you know, the beauty of it is the variety. And so, if I mean, yeah, I used to get wound up by what other people said. As much in life as anything to do with spiritual, I could quite, you know, get my happy with it. But the more I progress, the more I get back to thinking, no, they're entitled to their opinion. I don't have. There was I had a development group 3 years ago now. And one of the girls in that group was going through a really hard time. She was having a really difficult divorce, and her partner's not being very clever about working with the children and everything. And she came in one week and just blew me away. She said, I have now learned how to respond rather than react. And that has stayed with me, because I thought, what a wonderful piece of advice, because you have that choice. You have the choice, and the difference is the level of emotion involved. And you're in charge of your emotions. Despite what anybody says, when people say, I can't help what I think, well, you may not be able to help what you think, but you can certainly help what you hang on to. So if you get a thought that isn't very nice, or is not very negative, and isn't giving you anything, you can choose not to dwell on it. You can choose to go with the things that actually make you feel more positive, make you feel more helpful, make you feel more generous with what you're doing.
And I can honestly tell you, that's a wonderful feeling.
And, you know, you are in charge of your emotions, because who else is if you're not?
And we're tested all the time, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, all the time. So yeah, and I find that, but now I know I'm only human, so there are times if somebody, not outside of trance, but somebody, you know, says something to me, I kind of like, woo. But yeah, I think it's great.
I tell you, the way I deal with that often, if I come to something and it's like walking into a wall and it's really stopped you and it's really hurt you already, I just laugh, because I find, and it doesn't matter how I feel, I find that laughter changes the vibration of it, and then I can stand back from it and think, it's not worth it. Just walk away, walk around it, whatever.
It's true. I think it's part of awareness. You know, I do know, like, in awareness, I used to think it was all spiritual awareness. Connecting with spirit, you wait for that next awareness that spirit's going to give you. But I also realized recently, in this past year, that awareness is what you're just speaking about. It's about acknowledging your faults. It's about opening up to other people with your heart, you know, and being more gracious of life and not criticizing anybody else.
The whole journey, the whole human experience is your spiritual pathway. Because everything you encounter, every difficulty, every challenge, every anxiety, every uncertainty is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for you to choose how you relate to that. And, you know, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, I've fallen over so many times, I couldn't count.
So right.
But you get better at it if you try to cultivate that feeling of being in control of yourself.
It's a good feeling.
Try to accept that spirit are trying to help you and actually give you the guidance about it. I mean, we haven't really talked very much about the ego. I mean, this is something that often comes up in conversation, but the ego plays an important role because it is there to protect your physicality. This is, you know, the fight or flight part of you that says, am I in danger in this situation? No, fine, I can relax. Am I in danger in this situation? Yes, okay, I've either got to fight or I've got to run and hide somewhere. But when you're in a situation that we're fortunate enough to have this connection with spirit and to listen to the guidance they give us, then you're able to bring a more balanced view to it. and you can, yeah, you can take, it's almost like taking a breath. You know, the old thing used to be count to 10 before you respond. And it is that sort of thing about actually measuring things. And the more you practice being positive and to bring forward that energy of love and compassion and understanding and wisdom, the more you work with that, the more it becomes ingrained in you. And the more you learn to deal with the different situations that you come across. But the whole pathway, the whole lifetime, it gives you that opportunity to develop. And we shouldn't look at it as being, you know, well, that's my earthly life, that's my spiritual pathway. It's all part of the same thing.
I agree. It's aligning ourselves with our soul. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is great, Ray. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will be posting it soon. I appreciate it. I could go on and talk to you all day. Pick your brain a little more. I will ask you if you have anything else you want to say.
No, I think the main thing to say is that if there are people out there who feel drawn to become more active on their spiritual journey, it is good to seek somebody that you know who know well enough to know that they're honest, that they have integrity, that they have respect, and to work with them, and just to accept that it's a learning process. Like life is a learning process. You did not, as a baby, learn to get up and walk without falling down a few times and getting bumps on your nose or bumps or scraping your knees or your elbows or whatever it is. So yes, there will be times when things are difficult, when you feel you've made mistakes or you've got it wrong. But when I always come back to this is that I look back at my life, and the times that I have learned the most have been the times where I've got it the most wrong. Because I can look back on those and reflect and think, I really shouldn't have done that. Or this is what I've learned from that. And that's what I try to do now, is to actually look for the lessons that those things have taught me. I had a difficult year a few years ago when I was in a situation where I didn't want to be somewhere, but I had given an undertaking that I would be there for a year. And because it was a difficult situation, I spent quite a lot of time on my own. And I used that time to look back over the whole of my life and to look at all those areas in my life where there was some difficulty, some pain, some unresolved business, if you like. And I went back and I actually, in my mind, quite consciously sent forgiveness to all the parties involved, including myself, and that's the hardest part sometimes, is to forgive yourself. And to the situation, and to realize that at that point in time, because I knew Lester, I was doing the best that I could. And that whatever decision I made and however it ended up, I learned something from that situation. And there's another friend of mine who has a saying that any area of your life where there's pain is one where you haven't sent enough love. And that's a really beautiful thing to do, because if you send that love consciously to that situation, and really, really particularly to yourself, and we beat ourselves up mercilessly so many times over so many things. And actually, you know, if you've got integrity, if your intent is right, then you're doing the best you can, and you should accept that. And just honor yourself, honor that aspect of the divine consciousness that is within you, that is trying to express itself the best way it can. And having this difficulty of dealing with this human shell that it sits within, and the brain, which is working against it half the time, and the mind, which tells you all sorts of porcupines and leads you in all sorts of funny directions. So, you know, it is a complicated situation to be in the human existence. And we do the best we can. We do the best we can. As any developer, spiritual developer, should accept that it's not a straight path, that there are going to be, and that you have got to keep trying, that you have. And one of the ironic things about it is that, you know, we go into this learning situation and we think we've got to try really hard. We've got to read these books, we've got to go to these workshops, go to seminar, these courses. You do all this work. And you know, the time that you develop most is the time when you sit quietly and connect with spirit.
So true.
That's where your development occurs. But we don't, you know, because we're conditioned as human beings that we should be having to work at everything, work, as opposed to just allowing and accepting, then we make life really, really hard for ourselves.
So true. That's why I created circles, was because I did search and search for guidance, even though I knew what was going on with me spiritually. I needed guidance to understand it. I don't know if that makes sense, but like symbols and, I've seen spirit all my life, but I didn't understand. And you couldn't find it. People stop at a certain level. So why not just sit and teach yourself, or sit in a circle of people and learn from everyone and our guides?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I think I just like to make life hard for myself, which is why I don't get clairvoyance, because I have to try. I mean, in my prime, I talk about myself being clairsentient or clair-knowing. And that's hard because you're not getting any concrete feedback. You're not seeing anything. You're not feeling anything particularly. It's just there. And it can come across as being quite arrogant. And I realized that in my working career that was coming forward with me, because situations would crop up and I just know that something would be done a certain way. And it wasn't me being egotistical about it. It's just a knowing that if it wasn't done that way, it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to work out. And people used to say to me, "You're arrogant." And I said, no, it's just I know this is going to be done that way, isn't it? And then I look back and I think, actually, I probably did sound arrogant. But it's fine. You do the best you can.
Yes.
But it's hard, when you don't have that direct connection, that concrete connection one way or another, it makes your development so much more difficult. And you really have to trust and accept. And the two cards that I always used to draw when I was sitting in circles, it makes me smile because I still draw them now whenever I look at it, is trust and patience.
Yeah, trust and patience.
Yeah. And being an Aries, patience is not always the easiest thing,
You're an Aries.
I am.
I didn't know that. Oh, wow. I didn't know you were an Aries, Ray. Okay. Well, anyway, thank you, Ray. And I'm going to stop recording now.
It's been a privilege to share time with you.
It's been wonderful. I love it. I could stay here all day and pick your brain, like I said. So I got to figure out how to stop recording, even though I've done it before. I think I pushed pause here. And goodbye, everybody. I'll be posting this video very soon. Bye-bye.